Amy, I think back in the day, if there had been an award for messiest desk when I was in elementary school, I'm sure I would have won it every single time there was a desk check because I was so cluttered and disorganized. It's not that I didn't want to be neat and tidy. In hindsight, I think I didn't know how. But you seem like an organized person, and you've been an elementary school teacher, so you've put up with kids like me. Was your organization natural, or did you learn those habits somewhere?
I think for some of it, it was some observed behavior in my growing up, especially my one grandmother. She had a place for everything, and everything had a place. You knew where everything was. And there are parts of me in my environment that are very organized and others that I could not care less. End of the day, the only thing I really need to pick up is, if my dog Jenny has left any sharp, bony type toys on the floor, I'll pick those up so I don't accidentally step on them in the middle of the night. But it is not uncommon for me to leave cabinet doors open all the time and do not look in my junk drawer because it's a hot mess. So if I need something like my glasses to see as I work on the computer, it is not uncommon for me to have a pair of glasses in every room of my house. That's organization for me. I don't have to remember where I put my last pair of glasses because I've got one in the room. That works. But I'm sure I could probably take some lessons.
Well, I know I could. And this topic is living tidily is really perfect for me because I just moved this past weekend all of the remainder of the detritus out of my house and into my new wife's house. And so what has been this super organized house that she lives in now has had my stuff just like dumped into it. And we're trying to cope with the fact that we now have a lot more stuff and not any more space to put it. So for our first conversation on a new topic of ingenuity, we want to talk about the kind of environment in which creativity can flourish, an organized and tidy environment. How does our home help shape the story of our life?
And so to help us with this creativity, we are welcoming Jenni Mauran to the table. Jenni is an expert in living tidily with a KonMari consultant, officially certified to help everyone tidy our homes using the KonMari method. So welcome, Jenni.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Holland Webb.
Hi, I'm Amy Boland.
And you're listening to The Afterword, a conversation about the future of words.
So we'd like to get to know you a little bit better as a person, how you got into tidy living. So in just 60 seconds, would you mind sharing the Cliff Notes version of your life and who you are?
Sure. The KonMari story resonates with me because I was like this as a young child. I was constantly organizing my clothes, my closet. I was rewriting my notes for school until they were neat. I've always been organized. I'll say that, not tidy. I always was organizing things. Later in life, as an adult, when I had children and dogs in a home and all the things that come with growing up, I started becoming more interested in more of the tidying, the decluttering, just purely for like survival reasons, to manage my life, to get a hold of my life. And it just kind of snowballed and I wanted more and more and more of it. And so, I wanted to be a consultant for a while and I've helped people tidy in the past. And so my husband got the course for me so I could have a certification behind it. And I was already so passionate about her method and how she went about helping people tidy their homes. So, that part's been fairly recent, I would say in the last 2 years. But I think this is a little part of me, of my DNA.
Well, it sounds like your passion has turned into a profession. So that's exciting.
Yes.
All right. So we've already started using some words that maybe not everybody understands or might have some misconceptions. So we're going to throw out some terms, Jenni, and would love for you to unpack them a bit in a neat and tidy way. All right. So the first one is, what's the difference between tidy and clean?
Okay, tidying is typically with the items in your home, the items in your environment. So like if you put everything back in its home or put everything away before you go to bed, that would be more tidy. Clean is more when you're cleaning dirt, you're cleaning the scum on the bathtub, you're wiping down the kitchen counters, that sort of thing. So you can actually be very, you can be one or the other. Don't necessarily, not everyone is clean and tidy, but tidy, I think, tends to deal more with the clutter aspect of our homes.
Okay. What about this word? And you've mentioned a little bit too, minimalist. What are we talking about?
Yeah, that's, and that kind of, it has some different definitions for different people. The actual definition of it is intentionally living with basically things that you only need in life. And so when you live more minimally, you kind of cut out the excess, you cut out the extra, the knickknacks and the clutter and the, 4 sets of dishes and all of the extra things that you don't necessarily use or need or love every day. And so minimalists tend to subscribe to this idea of, I want to live with less. I want to simplify my life in every way, but usually starting with their stuff so that I can free up time, free up space to maybe do other things, find some peace, and live more simply.
Okay. That sounds good because, when I was in education, they would send those beginning of the year letters or little lists out to teachers. What do you like? What's your favorite this? What's your favorite this? What do you collect? And I would, every year when it said, what do you collect? I always wrote dust because I don't want anything, I know I collect dust. I don't need anything else I have to clean. All right. So next word is clutter. What is clutter?
Okay. So the definition of clutter, it again means a lot of different things. It's basically an untidy mass of things. And I think the root of it, if I remember correctly, is to clot, like to block. So that kind of makes sense. But clutter is just stuff, items in our home, in our environment that distract us visually, that distract us physically, that distract us emotionally and mentally, really in any way. And we'll get more into that. But anything that kind of impedes our mental, spiritual, physical health, to me, is clutter.
Okay.
That's yeah.
That's a very broad stroke, but it can cover a lot of things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we hear stories like this. There recently was some stories, especially about certain types of populations, and it doesn't have to be in any area of the country, but we hear about these people who have gone in for a well check, and then you find, 100,000 stacks of old National Geographic magazines, right? So what does hoarding mean? And is that more of a behavior that can, or is it a psychological diagnosis? I don't know. Help us out.
I think it's both because there are different levels. So you can be, say, a very low level hoarder. It's basically the idea that you feel like you cannot part with something because it's going to serve you in some way. Like you feel like you have to save it. Maybe you're going to need it and you just can't let it go. It's almost a compulsion. So level 1 hoarding would just be kind of a little bit of clutter in every room. But then it gets extreme where you've seen on the television shows where people literally cannot pass through a hallway or a room. And so it is an addiction for some people, but for a lot of people, it can be just a response to maybe how they grew up. We've got children and grandchildren of Depression era folks who didn't know if they were going to have that item, didn't know if they could buy it again or find it again, and held on to things. And so there are a lot of different components to that. But definitely it's just holding on to things because you just feel like you cannot part with it. Like it's not taken lightly. It's a very serious, like, I cannot let this go kind of.
So you're not talking about when we had our episode on supply chain and we were talking about toilet paper and we were like, we have to have toilet paper. Right?
I mean, I guess you could definitely hoard things in that they call it just in case scenario. So just in case I don't have toilet paper, if there's an apocalypse or there's none in the store. Yes, people do hoard things for just in case reasons, but that would be more situational than people who kind of long-term hoard.
Okay.
I mean, it's more of a deep-seated issue. Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm starting to panic, a little sweat's growing here. I know I've got a certain cabinet that has my emergency toilet paper just in case, All right.
That's okay.
Okay. So let's talk about lifestyle habits. What do we talk about when we think about that in the world of being tidy?
Sure. That has actually a lot to do with if your space is tidy or not. So if your lifestyle habit is, okay, like in our home, everything can be out. My kids can be working on Legos, drawing pictures, whatever. At the end of the day, unless something is ongoing, it has to be put away in its home. We kind of reset at night. And so when we get up in the morning, everything's peaceful. I come down and get my coffee and my house is straight. If you are one who does not keep up with, say, doing the dishes at night and that sort of thing, that is a lifestyle habit that is going to affect your level of clutter, affect maybe your anxiety level, that sort of thing. So how you deal with your clutter really on a daily basis even can really determine how tidy your home is, how anxious or not anxious you are, and all of that sort of thing.
All right, so I need to train my dog to put her toys away.
That would be ideal.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you. This really helps. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
We live in the upstate of South Carolina, and not very far from us is this great little place you can tour, the Carl Sandburg home. Have you ever been there?
I have.
It's fun.
Beautiful.
And you go, I think that I went for the first time I was maybe 15 or 16, and you go into the house, and Carl Sandburg was a poet and his wife was a goat farmer, and you go around in the house and there are stacks of books. The shelves are packed with books. The chairs, all around the chairs are just up, up to chair arm height. There are books. And I remember there were these two women behind me on the tour through the house, and the tour guide said something about all these stacks of books. And one of those ladies said his wife was a saint. And the tour guide stopped the tour and said, she really was a saint, because he was so cluttered. And yet he was such a creative genius. So why shouldn't we just live in clutter? What's wrong with just being surrounded by chaos?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Well, my argument would be people don't really enjoy the chaos, and they don't really enjoy the clutter. Now, I think for some people, if there's something that's really special to you and you love, say it is books, say you love books, you have more of those than you would anything else. It's when people have a lot of everything. Like if you have one collection, that you really enjoy and you would like to add to, that's great. But I would argue that if you really have a lot of clutter, that it might even be affecting you and you don't realize. So it would be the equivalent of walking into a room. We've all had this experience. We walk into a room and say there are toys all over the floor, or we walk into the kitchen and there are dishes everywhere, or we look over at the giant load of laundry. You feel that. You feel that in your chest. You feel that it changes your mood. It affects your mood. And some of us will tackle it. Sometimes it will make us walk away. I'm not doing this. I'm overwhelmed. This is too much. And then that can snowball. So I think that is the danger of living in clutter, is that if it is affecting us, which I would argue, even if people say it's not, I think it is, that it can really accumulate and cause so much stress and anxiety that it's not good for you. It's not good for your mental health. It's not good for you in your relationships with your family. And it can just continue to get worse. So I think the chaos, I don't know if it is ever really good for us, but I think there's just so much peace and so much more stress relief when we can let go of the clutter.
Okay. Well, let's step right a little bit farther and take one more step a bit. And we're going to look at some data. In Australia, there was a survey, and 40% of folks said they felt guilty, depressed, anxious about their home clutter. So kind of going back to your point, Jenny, 10% of the women said they got depressed every time they opened their closets. I'm not sure if it's because the clothes didn't fit. I would be more depressed about that. But what are some of the mental health benefits of decluttering?
That study does not surprise me at all. And I'd heard the one about the women being depressed, opening their closets. I've read this book one time, and it talked about how everything in our home kind of sends us messages, right? So if we walk into a room and the kitchen's a mess, it's screaming like, you need to clean me up, right? So everything in your house is kind of constantly letting you know what needs to happen. And so that can really mess with you because you can feel like a failure if you don't get it done, if you don't get to it. So for a woman walking in her closet, a closet full of clothes, if some don't fit, that's a failure of I haven't lost the weight. Number two, I've spent money on these clothes and I don't like them. I've wasted money on clothes that I don't like. And then if I like them, if I wear them and I don't like them, I'm not going to be happy. Number three, I've spent money on clothes that were trendy or like maybe am I too old? Am I too young for this? Should I even be wearing this? And so there are all these questions. And then I think the financial burden, like, oh my gosh, I've spent money on all these clothes. Look at this closet. What have I done? And I'm wearing, they say you wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time is the statistic I've gotten from Joshua Becker. And so I think it's just, we open that closet and we feel, and this might be more for women. I think that's probably more significant for women, but all of those things are screaming at you, you didn't do this right. Right. And so if we only have clothes in our closet in this moment or in this season of our life that fit us, that we love, even if it's a small wardrobe, which I would argue for, less decision making, easier to manage, then we open our closet every day, everything in our closet fits. None of those messages are coming at us. If we've gained a little weight, if we haven't obviously overspent. And we're going to continue to make those mistakes. It's not like this is it's not expecting perfection, but when you kind of strive for that goal of living with less, a lot of those negative messages go away just naturally.
That makes sense. When I moved, one of my best friends, because it was a situation where I was still in my old house waiting for the final closing. And I had people in my new house unpacking all of my stuff and putting it all away. So my friend, she was in my closet putting my clothes away. She color coordinated my closet. I haven't touched it since. It's gorgeous. It's just, all the whites, the orange, the color, it follows the rainbow. It's great. So there's you go. Another tip for your closet to be happy.
Pleasing to the eye. Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that you can look at something and it's depressing to you. Maybe if you give it away or throw it away, you won't be faced with that feeling every time you look at it. I don't know. That seems like an obvious answer, but I don't know. Hadn't thought about that before.
It makes us more intentional about what we buy, what we bring in our home, what we wear. And so you kind of cultivate your space basically. And then, like you said, you don't, all those guilts and fears and failure feelings kind of go away. So it's a process, but it definitely helps to move in that direction.
I find decluttering just exhausting. Feels good when you're done, but it's exhausting to do it. And I've heard that I'm not alone in this. Many people also find decluttering exhausting and say they struggle to declutter. What is it that just makes us love clutter so much? And how do we overcome that feeling of attachment to the things that we have?
Well, that you hit the nail on the head. I think the word is attachment. I think for several different reasons, maybe we grew up in a space where our parents kept all of that stuff. Like we had matching furniture sets and you had all the knickknacks and you had, some of that is just your environment. Someone maybe gifted it to you. Someone made it. You bought it. Maybe you bought it with your hard-earned money. I can't get rid of this. I spent good money on it. So I think a lot of it is rooted in fear and guilt. Fear of not having it, guilt of, wasting money on it or whatever, or giving away something somebody gave you, whatever it is, that you're being wasteful. Creatives, it's really funny. People who are creative tend to go, I can do something with this. I can take this toilet seat and make a planter, and their brain works like that. It's like, I can't get rid of this. This is useful. This is perfect. You hear that a lot. This is perfectly good. This is perfectly good. I can use this for something. And so it's very hard to let it go. It's not that, I don't know if it's a love of clutter. I think attachment is definitely the word. And for some people, it's comforting. You know, it shows that for some people, it's a measure of success. I was able to buy all this stuff. I have all this stuff around me that I earned, that I bought myself. Or they think they need to provide that for their children, for their family. I need to provide all this stuff that I didn't have. So there are a lot of different reasons for that, but we are definitely attached to our clutter. And the marketing in our society does not help, because everywhere we go, everything we see online, every TV we watch, every TV show we watch, that is the message we constantly get, is that we need more. That our pots and pans aren't good enough, and our clothes aren't good enough, and our house isn't big enough. And, you know, and so we're inundated with those messages instead of, hey, be grateful, live with less, you don't need it. So, and that's hard. That's kind of a hard thing to combat, I think, for a lot of people.
Mm. That word attachment is a good one. Again, when I moved out of my old house, I was talking to my children and said, okay, if it's got a memory attached, there's that word attached to it, and then we'll move it and I'll store it. Well, apparently we have a lot of memory because it's in my attic right now. But that's okay. I'm of the belief, because I have inherited things that were really precious, that belonged to a grandmother or a great grand or a great granddad. And knowing that I have that because it brings me a piece of joy because it's attached to that memory is a little different. So that attachment I can kind of handle, but I probably need to work on my attachments with some of that.
That's a good point, because that does kind of move over into sentimental items, which are very difficult to declutter. And we do need to find what brings us joy, and we need to keep those things. We're not just trying to throw away all of our stuff, just to throw away. We're trying to it's about being intentional about what you need and what you love versus just keeping everything and holding on to everything that's maybe making your life more difficult.
Okay, I like that. Intentional. That's good. All right. So as we wrap up this first episode, I want you to, in a nice, neat, tidy bow, put together an essential element for how we can understand this lifestyle habit of tidiness.
Probably the most important thing to be successful in tidying is to really value it, to really understand what the other side is going to look like. And that's difficult for a lot of people, and it's a lot of hard work. But I think really valuing and understanding that this process is going to, when you get to the end of it, there's going to be such a huge reward. And a lot of times it's hard to explain the value to somebody because they're not there yet. They're not on the other side. And so I would say that's probably the biggest part of it, is just understanding what it's going to do for you in all aspects of your life.
Okay. Well, that sounds nice and neat and tidy. I can't wait for us to have more of a conversation, because I kind of want to know how you get that person who can't see it to actually visualize it. Like, what are some of the tools? So I can't wait till we continue this conversation.
Right. I have all kinds of questions, but for now, we'll say special thanks to Jenni. This is really practical and timely for me as we're combining households over here. While you wait for part 2, please go to the afterwordpodcast.com. You can listen to past episodes you may have missed while you're tidying your house. And you can also become a subscriber. You can leave us a review at Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast, and tell your friends about us. And as always, you are welcome at our table.